The ambassador was quiet, probably because he was looking at the same thing I was. The ship from the view screen was roaring down from the sky. The birds gathered on the platform gave a wide berth to the ship, and a low hum began from the underground facility. "Stand clear. Any personnel near the landing zone, stand clear. Do not attempt to retrieve any lost metal objects." The announcement came over the speaker as the ship descended. The oscillating magnetic devices shifted power dynamically according to the position of the ship, slowly drawing it toward the center. "Descent in 5. The voice echoed over the ground, and for a moment it seemed like the whole world was silent, save for the ship and the machines drawing it close. "The first ship to land on Earth is Dlamison. Our people will be remembered for this, all over this world, and maybe more. We can settle the misidentification later. For now, the whole world, no, two worlds are watching." I was in reverential awe. The broadcasts from where we stood were live streamed to every corner of the globe, major cities from Berlin and Moscow to Timbuktu and New Kyoto. All eyes were on my people. It was humbling and proud, watching them come close, ready to kiss the earth. Their oxydraulic landing gear coming out as they were aligned into the center and drew ever closer. I wondered, what will their first words be? Humans are as fond of famous first words as we. It was one of the things their kind and mine had in common. In the search for immortal fame, what was said by those who went first was scrutinized long after the passing of the speaker. "Landing in 1. The announcement came out, and even those full of hate were for perhaps the first time in their lives, full of wonder. 30 seconds. The announcement came out as the ship was only 100 meters off the ground. 10 seconds. The announcement rang out. The hum from the magnetic devices began to die down as the power consumption diminished. The thud of the touchdown was enough to shake the world, or so it seemed from where we stood. And then the doors began to open, and a ramp slowly descended. No one spoke. No one made a sound. There was only the hum of the ship as its engines slowly died and the ramp came down to touch solid ground for the first time in who knew how long. I tried to see inside as the lights came on, but there was no one there. A human might have made themselves known immediately, but Lamisa tended to take our time about these things, giving others a chance to respond to a new presence, at least for a few seconds. "That is not one of our official merchants," the ambassador said the instant the female of my species came into view. She stood in full view as the camera zoomed in to take her figure in, definitely female, with a long tail and a shapely form. I hadn't seen a female of my species in what felt like years, but my surprise at seeing her was not nearly as great as it was seeing what she wore. That she wore anything was a surprise, but more than that was no uniform I recognized, at least. Not from this century. She stood in a kind of modified set of boots that rose up to the bend in her legs, like it was based on a human model and then altered to fit us. I will never forget what she wore. A dark bodice and a loose scarlet coat with long sleeves and a black skirt that was slid up to her right hip. Even that was less surprising than the eye patch over one eye, the tri-corner hat, and the sword on her hip. My people do not use, and have never used, swords. She sauntered down the ramp with her tail wagging wildly behind her. I looked at the view screen like I was in a trance. Her fur was a bright and shaggy red, and her snout was middle length, much like mine. Her mouth was open and tongue lolled out happily. Gold rings in her ears wobbled back and forth with every step. She stopped at the base of the ramp, staring down at the final step that would carry her from her ship into the annals of our people's history. Then she stepped forward, and before the eyes and ears of an entire planet she said, "For all them what went out and didn't make it back again." Did she... What? The ambassador's tail was stiff. What is she wearing? What did she say? Is she not using a translator? I wasn't sure if it was rage or dismay, or that he was just at a total loss. I was no less confused, and from the look of them, the Earth ambassador, the security teams, including Bosun and Byron, were as much at a loss as anyone. Perhaps then it is no surprise that it was Fauve who spoke up first. "She looks so cool. She's like a pirate." That was when it clicked. The captain's clothes, her sauntering manner, even the sword and the way she spoke. All seemed like they were ripped from the pirate movies I looked at a long time before coming to Earth. With nothing else for it but to go forward, the lot of us collectively approached. Though I won't pretend we didn't hesitate for a step. There was simply no other option. And so we found our rhythm. and as a gaggle of confused individuals, we approached the ship of my people. To their credit, the security teams of both Earth and Lamius spread out to surround each half of our dignitaries, save for Boatswain and Byron, who stood in front of Fove and I near the back. When we approached, it was the Earth ambassador who spoke first. He was a slender man of medium build and tan skin, a thin mustache beneath his lip, and horseshoe-pattern baldness on his head. In the name of the Earth government, we welcome you as our guest. Please make yourselves at home for the duration of your stay. The captain made a polite half-bow to the lot of us. It was quite formal, and appeared to imitate the mannerisms of humans from centuries before the present. Then she spoke in the most bizarre fashion. "Thank ye, human person. I be grateful for the safe port in the storm, especially since I have a small confession to make." She then straightened up and added, "First, thanks much for inviting us to Earth. Me apologies for the tricky stunt. Me colleague here be right. I be not the correct ship. I beat them to it, played a sly and took their place. They be fine, just weeks behind us still, playing it safe, sound and air so dull." Her tail wagged back and forth as she laid out her confession. "We was sailing the void when we caught wind of the transmission calling a merchant vessel to Earth. A new cargo, something worth a lot to a lot of folk. A cargo I once got a chance to try and wouldn't miss a chance to try again. With money on the table waiting to be taken, I wouldn't miss me chance. So I turned me ship around and headed this here way to get what I could before the rum been gone into the bellies of a crew a lot more dull than mine. Thank ye, Ambassador, for granting permission to land, even if you did nae quite mean it for us. I've been a jolly admirer of humans for some years, and I be honored and grateful for the chance to visit for fun and profit." She brought her hand down and clapped the slender human on the shoulder, her tongue lolling out of her mouth. She cocked her head to the side, clearly far from done speaking. She introduced herself. "And before ye ask, the last humans I met couldn't pronounce me name in me language, so they gave me a name in yours that there I liked a lot. You can call me Bonnie Red if it please ye, and if it don't, try and pronounce it in me language." She let out the little row noise our species made when we were at our happiest, and from her wagging tail, I could see she was over the moon with glee. Seeing the crowds well beyond our little gathering, she hopped up and down, ears flopping wildly about. She raised her open hand and waved it as much as her arms allowed, like she was waving hello to dear friends. "Ahoy there, humans! It be jolly to meet ye. I hope we can be mates." With her giant, gleeful, and to my eyes, frankly beautiful face, Captain Bonnie Red seemed to grab hold of hearts and imaginations in the watching humans at the same time and just squeeze the goodwill out of the lot of them, even the ones who had precious little goodwill to give. Maybe you couldn't get blood from a stone, but it seemed you could get goodwill from one if you were a Dlamisan in a pirate costume. Professor Sixlith asked the question our ambassador and everyone else seemed to be too confused to ask. "Are you not using a translator, Captain? What is with your way of speaking?" He licked his eyeballs with the nervous rapidity I was familiar with, clearly as disturbed as the rest of us. She seemed to straighten up and preen, almost panting with pride when she explained, "Oh, after I met that there last crew of humans, they told me I reminded them of a gentleman of fortune, showed me clips of some movies. After I did a run of supplies for the university, I gave them a discount in exchange for copies of all the gentlemen of fortune movies made from the 20th through the 23rd centuries. That be how I learned English." My entire student body, and our professor, let out the various noises of exasperation our species typically did. It was exactly the sort of thing the university would do to save credits. Copies of something cost nothing but a few minutes to make, and credits saved were credits that could be used elsewhere. And now here we were, thanks to them. Face to face with a pirate-crazy Dlamisan ship captain with a thirst for rum. I won't pretend I wasn't nervous about this prospect, but with Earth having given them an official welcome, and the situation being what it was, it is a credit to my people's ambassador, and perhaps to the influence of humans, that rather than kick up a stink on the spot, he rolled with the unexpected punches and answered, "You should get a translator. Come by the embassy later to sign for one, I beg you." His pained look and stiff tail said he did not care for the way Bonnie spoke. "Of course, sir, of course. But where's that there one who sent me the rules of that there game? The one what wants to see how we work together?" "Ear?" she asked, and to my dismay, every eye turned toward me, and everybody stepped aside. I had no idea at the time whether having her attention on me was good or not. But if I had known that what she asked was transmitted over the entirety of Earth all at once, I, at the time, would have thought it was a harbinger of disaster. "You and me, we got words to trade later, bucko," she promised, and gave me a very human wink before she let the tide carry her through the rest of the moment. It was a wild, heady time, and I didn't get a chance to make notes about what happened. I had to piece it together. I suppose bringing Fauve this far was needless, but I was so used to her being close by that it never occurred for me to leave her watching with the others. "I had planned for you to address the crowd, to say something to mark the occasion, but my people's ambassador looked the bizarre and frankly outlandish Dlamacin female up and down. She couldn't properly rest her hands on her hips, at least not as humans could. Our mobility in our arms was a little less than them. However, the way she seemed to preen with pride, tilting her head up, fairly daring him to level too great a criticism at her, he let the statement come to a close, left hanging where it was. Her eyes went to the podium standing nearby, and the array of drones hovering and bobbing beside one another. The hum of her ship was gone, and up on the ramp there were the many furry members of her Dlamacin crew. At a glance I could tell they had picked up bits and pieces of their captain's habit. A few had gold earrings in their ears, others wore eye patches. It was a motley band if ever there was one, but none of them came down. They only watched. I suppose it's fair of me to say that they were more Dlamacin than Bonnie Red, since they chose to refrain from the lot of strangers where Bonnie seemed eager to mix. I'd be happy, right pleased even. Being the first one to land a ship on their world and saying nothing just doesn't seem too neighborly. Having said that, she brushed past the body of still confounded dignitaries and over to the podium. The cameras opted for a wider shot for her. Such was her oddity, I think, that her face alone would simply not do, so they caught everything about her, not zooming in until she was mostly obscured by the brown-polished podium. "Ahoy, humans! I be guessing I be not quite what ye expected. Course I be not what me folk expected either, but that be all part of the fun of living, getting what you don't expect. I be a simple captain in a jolly big void, so maybe I be not the fine, formal female that their history loves to tell stories about. But since I be the first, I want to say a bit." She kept her voice slow and steady. Odd as it was the way she was speaking, her mannerisms and echoing voice captured the crowd's attention and kept silent even the elements that might have been disruptive. I recalled the words of Percival about appearance. She might not know what he did, but she sure nailed it anyway, I thought as she took a deep breath before continuing. "Me first meetin' with humans been your soldiers. Me crew and I owe your people our lives. They intervened during a Zenti attack that there should have killed us all." She drew her sword, no easy thing for us to do. Unsurprisingly, given her appearance, it was a cutlass, and then drew it to the center of her body in a kind of military salute. "I salute ye. It be because of your fighters I learned your language, from your Gentlemen of Fortune movies, I think you call 'em pirate movies. And because of them I became a jolly admirer of man. Other people who love the void like me and mine? How could I not want to come say hello?" I wondered if, in any city in the world, her appearance had not caused silence to fall as her words were translated into the many popular languages of the world. She certainly had me spellbound as she wrapped up. "So let me just say to you what one of your folks said to me over rum after blowing up them what tried to blow me up first. The universe be full of danger, but it ain't full of strangers, just mates you haven't met. You can call me Bonnie Red like he did, and I hope I can call you friends." I'm sure that there were still the hateful ones there, ones who loathed us and were small-hearted and narrow-minded. But among the great big body of man, when Bonnie finished saying that, and her big bushy tail wagged back and forth with the same energy of a human child on Christmas Day, and her sword went back into place only for her hand to go up and start waving like she was seeing an old friend for the first time in a long time. She captured their imaginations in a way I never could have, and when I compared Bonnie Red to the alternative, a stuffy by-the-books Dlamacin captain with the dour professionalism of our ambassador, I can't help but think that we couldn't have had better luck than we did with her arrival. I leaned over toward my people's representative and whispered, "We have to run with it. She's perfect. Look." I inclined my head toward the mob of humans who were ready to embrace their new celebrity. The mob was waving back at her like she was a family member that just landed from a long flight after a trip took them far from home. Any hostility was drowned out completely. My ambassador opened up his datapad as if to confirm my words and began flipping through various reports from around Earth. In New Kyoto, Berlin, New Mecca, and a dozen other cities. There were humans waving at giant screens, as if Bonnie Red could see them too. I don't know if she learned to cock her head and flop her russet-colored ears from the last humans she met, or if she did it intuitively, or completely by accident. But the reaction to her was instant. I could only hear where I was. But the awes were audible even from where I stood. I tapped my ambassador on the arm and indicated as subtly as I could, my human who remained just behind me. "She's so cute and so cool." Fauve wasn't shouting it. What she said was, if anything, barely a whisper. But she was antsy, almost dancing the way she shifted around on her feet like she was starstruck. "I can work with this. Trust me, Ambassador. Remember the ball incident?" I asked, and he reached up and touched his head, as if recalling his own hangover. Our night of drunken revelry returning to his mind, I think, lent me, for the first time in my life, more credibility even than the professor had. He gave a subtle nod. "I'll handle things with the next ship myself. After I arrange housing, you will be responsible for assisting our fellow citizens with how to function here while on shore leave." "Me? Not Professor Siglith? Not someone from the embassy?" I asked, my heart's all seized up in my chest. "You said you could work with this. I'm taking you at your word. You wanted my help to stay, did you not? Prove your worth, or you have none. Whatever budget you need, I will grant, but keep them out of trouble." He said, and I could do nothing but accept his words. Many humans after my first edition were of divided opinions about our ambassador's approach to the matter. Some humans praised him as a hard-nosed professional. Others called him callous or cruel for laying so much on my shoulders. But I have to defend him. Bonnie Red was clearly an outlier among outliers, and anyone who would work for her had to be at least somewhat the same. The consequences of their bad behavior, the stakes for us, were high. In retrospect, after the release of my work, people learned much more. But in these early days, there was rumor, speculation, injured humans, and an arrested Dlamisa. Humans were still an enigma to the galaxy at large, and from the history we did have, humans were even more prone to war than my species. The possibility of war breaking out, however remote, was there in the minds of planners from precogs to my people's high command. The experience with humans just wasn't broad enough yet. Even their assistance with the Mixiki looked to some races like we were seeing a new apex threat on the galactic stage, so putting it on me with an unlimited budget, and by extension my fellow students, since there was no way a savvy instructor like Professor Siglith would leave me to handle all this by myself. Well, there is a Dlamison expression. The one you put in charge is the one who has the most to lose if they fail, followed by the one who has the most to gain if it succeeds. I was both. Failure here would mean I would almost certainly be pulled off-world, but success meant I would dramatically increase my odds of staying. And if I'm being fair, I think he believed I was more of an outlier than I was. Between getting drunk in the park, inventing a game on the fly, and that incident with Wolfbeard, he probably felt I too was a rogue element. In retrospect, maybe he was right.